Leonel Moreno uploaded multiple TikToks encouraging more of his fellow Latinos to come to the U.S.
Y es totalmente falso que las fronteras están cerradas. Las fronteras están abiertas. Capichi, para todas esas personas, muchachos.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
A Venezuelan migrant bragged about living off of U.S. taxpayer money.
Confieso que a mí no me gusta trabajar porque me da alergia. De los taxes que usted paga al mes.
What you all just heard seems like satire. That's the first thing that I thought of when I first listened to that. This has to be some sort of parody. There's no way that somebody who is admittedly from another country here in the U.S. illegally bragging about living off taxpayer dollars. It has to be some sort of fabrication that this is actually happening, and on social media, no less, encouraging other people to do it. Because here in the great state of Texas, we have a bit of an issue. There are hundreds of thousands of people rushing the borders, literally rushing the borders, pushing past National Guardsmen and concertina wire to come into the country. Now, I get it. America's pretty great. It can be in comparison to other countries. But this is a bit of an issue. When you have a situation that is this dire, that is taken so lightly and is politicized, I don't know what to say. I don't know about you, but it is disconcerting. But here we are, and I want you guys to listen and judge for yourselves the gravity of the situation. Even if you don't live in Texas, it is something that may end up on your door eventually.
Escalating on the Texas border. Dramatic new video shows a struggle between Border Patrol and migrants in El Paso. The video shows dozens of migrants pulling aside a razor wire fence, then pushing their way past a handful of Border Patrol agents. The migrants were eventually stopped a short time later by a steel fence, where border agents and Texas DPS contained the situation and processed the 400 to 600 migrants. Governor Greg Abbott posting on social media that after the incident, law enforcement quickly regained control and are redoubling the razor wire barriers, while urging Texas DPS to arrest those involved for criminal trespass and destruction of property.
Now, this isn't to say that every person who's trying to cross the border illegally has some sort of malicious intent or is a criminal in the truest of sense, but there are measures now being put into place in order to help prevent certain tragedies from happening. Recently, we had an incident over in Georgia where a nursing student was murdered by a Venezuelan immigrant who was here illegally. And so that is one of the tragedies that the nation has to grapple with while we talk about this situation. It has unfortunately become more and more and more politicized, but because people have narratives, because people choose to live in their own realities, everybody else has to suffer. And unfortunately, Lakin, the nursing student from Georgia, is one of those victims. You don't believe me? Check it out for yourself.
This wasn't Ibarra's first arrest either. After Riley's murder, a slew of Ibarra's past crimes came to light, including his status as an undocumented immigrant. Ibarra is from Venezuela and entered the U.S. illegally in 2022 at the border near El Paso, Texas. He was arrested and released.
So I think some of the misconception is that we don't understand how this system works. And obviously, I'm not going to give my opinion as to whether I think it's good or bad. This is just the system that's in place. So what will happen is once he's been arrested when he crossed the border and then released, depending on whether or not he was seeking asylum or what he was doing, he's released back into the United States until that asylum hearing can happen. And that can be a really, really, really long time.
Once Ibarra was already in the States, he and his wife got on a bus headed for New York. That's where he was arrested again about a year later for endangering his wife's 5-year-old son. At the time, Ibarra lived in Queens and worked as a delivery driver. He was arrested when NYPD officers caught him driving a moped with the 5-year-old boy riding along without a helmet. Ibarra was arrested but released before NYPD could issue a detainer. About a month later, Ibarra was in Athens, Georgia, the same city where Laken Riley would later be murdered. Both Ibarra and his brother Diego Ibarra were arrested for allegedly stealing from a Walmart there. Walder says it's not a surprise that Ibarra was still in the States even after multiple arrests.
A lot of times what will happen is that they're not put on a plane immediately back to their country of origin. It's not how it works. Those repatriation flights, the list is months and months and months long to put people back on them. I think we think it's just an easy thing to do. It's unfortunately not. And as a result, they almost have sort of like a probation status, if you will, here in the United States. So that to me seems to be where the system, I guess, failed amongst other parts of this. They're supposed to be checking in with someone until, their hearing date or their conviction date or whatever it is that they're, going through the legal system doing. They're not supposed to be leaving the state that they're in, but clearly he did. And so I think that's where this sort of broke down. And once he got into Georgia, my guess is they probably lost track of him there because he obtained basically a fake ID.
So we circle back to Mr. Moreno. Evidently, his online activities has drawn the ire of ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement folks, and turns out this guy was involved in the immigrant monitoring program where they have to wear an ankle monitor, check in, all that good stuff. But he said, oh, screw that shit, and decided that he wanted to just do his own thing. And so now he feels that he's being persecuted. Then don't believe me, just watch the screen. And if you have a cursory understanding of Spanish, you can kind of follow along as well.
Estoy en peligro de muerte en United States. Necesito protección en Estados Unidos. Me están persiguiendo. Me han bloqueado mi cuenta y mi cuenta aparece de secciones abiertas en Nueva York y yo no estoy en Nueva York. Mi gente, necesito que estén pendientes de lo que está pasando porque mi familia corre peligro. Corre mucho peligro, muchachos. Me borraron la cuenta de TikTok y la otra también. He recibido muchas amenazas de gente poderosa, muchachos. Muchachos, ayuda, por favor. Mi familia está en peligro. Muchachos, por favor, ayúdenme.
So I want to turn the attention to AOC here. She has spoken very strongly about her pro-immigration views. And so she is noted as saying that she doesn't believe that there is a crisis going on and that things are being politicized and thrown out of proportion. But don't believe me, just listen to her for yourself.
Moral calculation, there is no economic calculation, there is no logical calculation, there is only a political calculation. And that political calculation is we are going to keep whining about it. We are going to keep pretending this is a crisis while contributing to actual problems. And then we're going to block the solution so that we can campaign on it over and over and over. And we can call it caravans, we can call it migrant crises, we can call it family separation, and they will just recycle it over and over and over again in order to gin up, just so much animosity and destruction in this country and racism in this country, because that's the only thing that the Republican Party even is standing on at this point.
You say it's a political calculation. I think that part is clear, but at the same time, it's like, if you told me that they're trying to weaken child labor laws on its face as a headline, that should not be politically expeditious. The reason they've managed to be able to do it is because nobody's talking about migrants anymore. Nobody's talking about the value of migrants, and that includes Democrats.
Absolutely.
I mean, are you dismayed that this White House, it acknowledges or it believes that it has a political problem on the border, and it is playing decidedly on sort of the Republican turf here in terms of what it's suggested, what it's agreed to, the executive orders that have been sort of reported on thus far? Or are you dismayed by that and the sort of contours of this conversation?
I am dismayed, and I'm very often find myself in shock at our current political situation, not just, I'm rarely in shock at the depravity of the Republicans, but sometimes, and this is long what I've been saying, sometimes we have, as Democrats, have to grow a little bit of a spine around here. And part of that means defending immigration as a core value of the United States of America. Yes, on a moral and on an identity basis, but on a nuts and bolts basis. The United States, our culture, our population, our economy needs immigration like lungs need oxygen.
I actually agree with this point. We do need immigration, and it needs to be controlled just like we control everything else. The Food and Drug Administration controls what we can and can't eat, as well as many other facets of our infrastructure. So the thing here to note is that it seems as though certain politicians are playing fast and loose with what they claim that we need as a nation. And in other cases, they have tight, stringent control over the things that, well, you know what, may not be politically advantageous for them. So you tell me what you think. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm just full of shit, but hey, let me know in the comments.